There's something profoundly strange unfolding right now. Quietly, invisibly, yet unmistakably. The ones who have begun to see through the game are vanishing. No announcements, no drama, no grand declarations. They're simply stepping back, fading to the edges, choosing silence over noise. If you've felt this pull yourself, that growing resistance to shallow talk, to social performance, to the endless dance of pretending, take a deep breath. This isn't a breakdown. It's not antisocial behavior. It's the most natural response of a mind that has woken up. And by waking up, I don't mean reading a few books about spirituality or playing with the idea of oneness. I mean the precise moment when the veil drops, when the illusion flickers and you finally see. Almost everything people are doing is a form of sleepwalking. They play roles, repeat lines, move through routines, unaware that they are asleep. Thought. Pretend that all this striving and seriousness actually leads somewhere important. It's a stage play where everyone must stay in character for the illusion to hold. But when someone wakes up, they break character. They forget their lines, they look straight at the audience, and that makes everyone else deeply uncomfortable. Because the awakened can see too much. They see the fear beneath the confidence, the emptiness beneath the busyness, the fragile ego hiding behind moral outrage. They see that every conflict, every division, every accusation of those people is just the mind projecting its own shadow outward. Once you see that, you can't unsee it. You can't take it seriously anymore. You can't participate in the blame, the performance, the endless judgment, because you now understand the cosmic joke. It's all projection, one massive mirror game. So what does the awakened person do? They withdraw. Not out of bitterness, not because they hate the world, but because staying in the game would mean betraying what they've seen. Every conversation demands pretending. Every social ritual demands a smaller version of themselves. Every interaction whispers, shrink, dim down, fit in. And at some point the soul says, enough. Stop pretending. Stop performing. Stop translating your depth into small talk just to belong. Go where you can breathe. This isn't escapism, it's ecology of consciousness. Staying in unconscious environments damages awareness. Think of a plant trying to grow in darkness. It can survive, but only for a while. Surrounded by sleepers, you spend all your strength just to stay awake. You filter projections. You hold your center amid chaos. You stay clear while everyone else drifts in fog. It's invisible labor, unseen, unacknowledged, but draining you to the bone. Eventually, you see the truth. You're spending all your energy not to be pulled back into sleep. So you make a choice. You choose consciousness over belonging, truth over approval, clarity over comfort. And that's when the disappearance begins. First, you leave social media. You see it for what it is, a machine of unconsciousness, a digital trance built on comparison, outrage, distraction. For the awakened, it feels like swimming in sewage. So you delete, disengage, disappear, and suddenly time returns. Then you stop showing up in social circles, not with announcements, but with quiet absence. Because most gatherings are performances, people performing success, happiness, identity, and you can't perform anymore. Your authenticity has outgrown the script. Next, certain relationships fall away. Not out of anger, but because they were built on your former self, the one who still played the game. Now you speak a different language, live in a different reality, and sometimes, yes, you leave your career. The hardest departure of all, because society has taught you that your job is your identity. But you can't keep working for a system you see through. You can't pretend to care about what you know is meaningless. Staying would mean a slower kind of death, the death of awareness. And then the solitude begins. Not loneliness, solitude. Loneliness is being surrounded by people who don't see you. Solitude is being alone and finally meeting yourself. You start hearing your own thoughts without the static of others' expectations. You start feeling your emotions without absorbing everyone else's noise. You start discovering what you truly want, believe, and are. This is what I call the hermit phase, the cocoon before transformation. No butterfly keeps one foot on the branch. You must withdraw to become. Here, in silence, you integrate. You reclaim all the unconscious fragments absorbed over years of pretending. You heal the wounds of falseness. You grow the courage to stand in truth even when surrounded by illusion. It's hard work, far harder than sleeping ever was. But the reward is everything. Freedom from validation, from approval, from the desperate need to belong. Because once you've found yourself, you realize that was what you'd been searching for all along. Once you've met yourself in solitude, something remarkable happens. You stop needing the world to mirror you back. The silence that once felt heavy now feels holy. The absence of noise becomes nourishment. You begin to realize that you were never truly with people before, only surrounded by their masks. Real connection requires consciousness meeting consciousness, and that cannot happen when most of the world is still dreaming. This withdrawal isn't rejection, it's refinement. You're no longer interested in performing for people who don't see. You're no longer compelled to explain yourself to minds committed to misunderstanding. You're no longer trying to convince others to awaken, because you finally understand. No one can be awakened by argument. Awakening is an experience, not a persuasion. You start to see the difference between solitude and isolation. Isolation is the fear of being alone. Solitude is the discovery that you are not alone, that awareness itself is company. In that vast inner space, you begin to sense something larger breathing through you. The same intelligence that moves the stars moves your chest. The same stillness that holds the mountains begins to hold your mind. And then comes the next realization. The disappearance is not the end. It's the integration. Because when you vanish from the noise, you don't fall into nothingness. You fall into presence. You fall into being itself. You begin to understand why so many mystics throughout history retreated into silence. It wasn't because they despised the world, but because they needed enough quiet to hear what the world was truly saying. Noise drowns out meaning. Silence reveals it. It's here that the work deepens. Alone with yourself, you start seeing the patterns that shaped your sleep. You watch the mind replay its scripts. The need to please, to achieve, to be seen. And without distraction, you see how absurd it all is. You laugh, sometimes bitterly, sometimes joyfully, realizing that what you used to call life was mostly performance. But solitude doesn't just expose illusion. It transforms it. The more time you spend with yourself, the less you identify with the self. You start sensing that what you are is not the voice in the head, not the personality, not the story. You are the awareness watching all of it unfold. You are the sky, not the storm. And once this recognition stabilizes, your energy changes. You no longer seek approval, not because you've hardened, but because you've softened into truth. You no longer crave connection, not because you're detached, but because you've realized you are connection. You no longer fear missing out, because nothing real can ever be missed. When you reach this stage, life simplifies itself. You eat when hungry, rest when tired, speak when truth wants to speak, move when movement calls. You stop chasing meaning because life itself has become meaningful. Every breath is revelation. Every moment is meditation. People often assume that disappearing from society means becoming cold or detached. But the opposite is true. The awakened become more alive, not less. They feel everything, the joy, the grief, the tenderness of existence, but they don't drown in it. They allow the world to pass through them without resistance, the way wind moves through leaves. This is where compassion becomes real, not the sentimental kind, but the clear-eyed compassion that comes from seeing everything as one movement of the same consciousness. You stop trying to fix others because you realize the moment you see someone as broken, you've already lost sight of their wholeness. So you let them be. You let them sleep if they must. You let them play their roles in peace. And when they're ready, truly ready, you reach this depth of seeing. Life stops being a problem to solve and becomes a mystery to live. The endless need to define, justify, and prove dissolves, because you finally understand that meaning doesn't come from life. It is life. Existence doesn't need your interpretation to make sense. It simply is, radiant and whole. Whether the mind agrees or not, you begin to laugh more easily. Not the laughter of cynicism, but of recognition. The cosmic joke reveals itself everywhere. The chase for power, prestige, status, all the things that once seemed so serious, now appear as children's games. And yet, you no longer judge them. You see the innocence in it all. Because you too once believed that more meant fulfillment, that winning meant worth. The difference now is that you've looked behind the curtain. You've seen that the wizard was never there, only smoke and machinery powered by collective belief. And when that illusion collapses, something astonishing happens. You stop resisting the play. You can watch the drama unfold without forgetting it's a drama. You can move through chaos without losing your center. You can participate in the dream while knowing it's a dream. Not out of detachment, but out of clarity. The awakened no longer cling to either side of the paradox. They don't escape the world, nor do they drown in it. They dance with it. They can engage deeply with form while remaining rooted in the formless. To an outside observer, they seem ordinary, maybe even invisible. But inside, they move from an infinite stillness that nothing can shake. This is why, to those still asleep, the awakened appear to have disappeared. They have, but not physically, energetically. They've slipped below the frequency of noise. They no longer broadcast from the same channel. They speak less, but every word carries the weight of presence. They move less, but every gesture ripples through reality. People wonder why they are no longer online, no longer loud, no longer trying to make an impact. It's because they finally understood the futility of trying to awaken others through force. You cannot drag someone out of a dream they are still enjoying. The dream must dissolve from within. So instead of preaching, they live as silent examples, proof that peace is possible even in madness, that stillness can exist amid motion. You might notice them if you're lucky. The quiet ones in the crowd, the ones who listen without waiting to speak, the ones whose eyes carry both softness and depth. They seem ordinary until you meet their gaze. And then something ancient looks back at you, something that sees not your persona, but your essence. That's when you realize they haven't disappeared from society. Society has disappeared from them. They no longer measure life by collective metrics. They don't need to post, to perform, to prove. Their compass no longer points toward success, but sincerity. Their ambition isn't to achieve, but to align. This kind of disappearance is freedom in its purest form. It's not rebellion, it's release. They no longer fight the system, they outgrow it. They don't destroy the illusion, they see through it. They don't abandon the world, they walk in it transparently, leaving no trace, bound by no identity. It's what the Zen masters called being in the world yet not of it. Living without armor yet untouched by the sword. Loving without need, yet unafraid of loss. And this freedom has a quiet beauty. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it simply is. A fragrance that spreads without effort, a clarity that illuminates without preaching. When the awakened speak now, they no longer speak to people. They speak from truth. And truth, when spoken from that stillness, doesn't convince, it reminds. It awakens something dormant in the listener. Not through argument, but through resonance. That's how awakening spreads, silently, like dawn. Not through movements or ideologies, but through presence. One clear mind brightens another, one peaceful heart steadies the next. And so the great disappearance isn't an ending. It's a quiet reconfiguration of humanity. The sleepers keep dreaming their dreams, while the awakened begin planting seeds in silence. Seeds that will one day grow into forests of consciousness. And this silent seeding is perhaps the most radical act of all. Because the awakened are no longer fighting darkness, they are cultivating light. They are not trying to change the dream by force, but to deepen their wakefulness until it begins to ripple outward on its own. Their very existence becomes subversive, not because they oppose the system, but because they no longer need it. They no longer feed it their fear, their attention, their energy. You see, the modern world runs on unconscious participation. It requires your outrage to sustain its conflicts, your envy to fuel its economy, your fear to justify its control. Every scroll, every argument, every opinion you defend, all of it is data, food for the collective machine. And when an awakened person stops feeding it, the system doesn't know what to do. Their silence breaks the algorithm. Their detachment disrupts the hypnosis. Their refusal to perform creates a gap in the pattern. And in that gap, something new can emerge. That's why the awakened disappear, not to hide, but to rewire reality from the inside. Each withdrawal is an act of spiritual defiance. Each moment of stillness is a quiet revolution. Because awakening doesn't destroy the old world, it reveals its unreality. And once you see that the cage was imaginary, you don't have to fight your way out. You simply stop believing it's real. This is the paradox the sleeping mind cannot grasp. True power is not in control, but in clarity. It's not the fire that burns down illusions, but the light that makes them transparent. You stop trying to dominate the dream, because you realize the dream is happening within you. When this insight crystallizes, compassion returns, not as duty, but as nature. You no longer pity others for sleeping. You see that consciousness is waking up in its own time, not for applause, but out of love for the play itself. This is the hidden truth the awakened eventually discover. The goal was never to escape the dream, but to wake within it, to live with eyes open, heart unarmored, mind uncluttered, to let the world pass through you without distortion, to be the sky untouched by the clouds that move across it. And when you live this way, you no longer fear disappearing, because you've realized something profound. You were never the one who appeared in the first place. The you that the world knew, the name, the identity, the story, was always temporary. What remains after it fades is what you've been all along, awareness itself, infinite and free. So yes, the awakened are disappearing, but not into darkness, into light, not into absence, into essence. They vanish not because they are lost, but because they have been found. And one day, when enough of them have disappeared, the world will notice, not through noise or rebellion, but through a quiet shift, like dawn breaking over a long, cold night. The sleepers will stir, the dream will soften, and what once seemed like disappearance will be revealed as the beginning of something entirely new. A humanity awake enough to remember itself.